Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker. All eyes are on Texas, where we expect to hear from the president in Corpus Christi this hour. He has just landed. It's his first trip since Tuesday's State of the Union and his first chance to sell voters on his affordability message from that night. His visit also comes with the first major primary of the midterm elections just days away, and still no endorsement in the closely watched Republican Senate primary in Texas, as Democrats see an opportunity to flip that seat blue for the first time in more than 3 decades. Today, all 3 Republican candidates are expected to be at the event with the president, hoping to boost their MAGA bona fides just days before voters head to the polls. Senator John Cornyn is defending his seat from a 2-pronged challenge from State Attorney General Ken Paxton and Congressman Wesley Hunt. The latest polling shows Paxton ahead, but not with an outright majority, which could mean a runoff for the top 2 vote-getters in May. But as he departed the White House, the president dodging a question on whether he would endorse in the race, instead focusing on energy costs, a key part of his affordability pitch, and expected to be the top issue in November's election.
Well, we're having tremendous luck with oil. We've got more oil than anybody, and the prices of gasoline are coming way down, and prices generally are coming way down. The pricing it's been amazing what we've been able to do in 1 year. Prices are way down, led by energy, led by oil. So it's Texas, it's a little bit of an oil meeting.
Now, we should note prices overall are still going up faster than policymakers want. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, all eyes are on frontrunners Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and State Representative James Tallarico, as polls present a much murkier picture of who could emerge victorious on Tuesday. In 2 polls from last month, one shows Crockett with an 8-point lead, while another found Tallarico ahead by nearly the same margin. Joining me now from Corpus Christi, Texas, is NBC's Priscilla Thompson. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez has the latest from the White House, and NBC's business and data correspondent Brian Cheung has a look at those new inflation numbers. Priscilla, let me start with you. You are in Texas with just days until the all-important primary there. How are the campaigns making their closing arguments?
For freedom.
Yeah, Kristen, last day of early voting here, and all 3 of these candidates are billing themselves as Trump allies. You have incumbent Senator John Cornyn saying that he is the safe choice, that he is a workhorse. He has demonstrated what exactly he can do, and they do not want to run the chance, he says, of Democrats picking up this seat. But you also have Texas AG Ken Paxton, who has more of that populist MAGA movement around him, saying that he is the more MAGA candidate. He is the fighter. That is what voters have told me about him. But of course, he is not without baggage. We know that he faced his own impeachment challenges here on the grounds of corruption. That is something that came up among voters that I spoke with some of them saying that Cornyn has the better character, but others saying what politician isn't corrupt in their opinion. And so they are going to support Paxton. And then, of course, you have that third candidate in Representative Wesley Hunt saying that he is the next generation MAGA candidate. And of course, as you noted, Donald Trump has not endorsed in this race. And I did ask voters, would that endorsement make a difference? One man actually told me he has not voted yet. He will wait until Election Day because he is hoping that Trump might endorse. That other woman who voted for Cornyn saying that she has already voted for him, but that both of them say that they want the person who Donald Trump wants and who he believes he's going to work best with. So a lot going on here ahead of primary day on Tuesday. Kristen?
Well, you can feel the energy in the crowd, that's for sure. Priscilla, talk a little bit about the Democratic side of this race. Equally heated, right?
Equally heated. Turnout on the Democratic side has outpaced Republicans. It is the most turnout we have seen in early voting in any recent midterms or even general elections. So there's a lot of energy on the Democratic side. You have State Rep James Tallarico, who is sort of pitching himself as the unifying candidate. The big tent, everyone is welcome, disillusioned Republicans, independents. And then you have Representative Jasmine Crockett, who is saying that she's going to be a fighter and that she's going to fight Senate Republicans. She's going to fight President Donald Trump. And that she is going to stand for democratic values, and she's looking to really juice that Democratic voter turnout. And so far, we have seen those numbers, so a lot of folks turning out. It remains to be seen whether the polling, what's going to bear out in terms of who exactly will win on the Democratic side, though, Kristen.
All right, well, we're going to watch it very closely. Gabe, let me turn to you. Of course, we are going to wait and watch to see what President Trump has to say any minute now. How central is this to the president's affordability message, and what do you expect we'll hear today?
Well, Kristen, the president doesn't like calling it affordability. You know, over the last several weeks, he keeps trying to say that, Democrats made up that word. But in reality, you saw it in his State of the Union address, first half of his speech dedicated towards the economy. And this is significant. Look, the president has been talking about energy for quite some time during campaign. He kept saying over and over again, drill, baby, drill. He is trying to make the case to Americans that energy prices have been coming down. And sure, gas prices have been coming down. They were on a downward trajectory even under President Biden. But other prices are still going up, including beef prices, for example. And there are real questions about drilling in general, that really offshore drilling really has not gone up during President Trump, that it's actually down slightly. And there are other reasons that gas prices have come down that may not have nothing to do with the president's policies. However, the energy secretary today, in an interview just a short time ago, he did acknowledge that some of the unrest, the uncertainty rather, in the Middle East has actually had oil prices go up slightly. But overall for the economy, it's a complicated picture, Kristen. As you know, oil prices might be down, but that's not always necessarily good for energy companies and for the economy as a whole. Still, though, the president hoping that message, that prices are coming down, that's the message he's trying to sell this afternoon, and that his administration, the White House, wants to get across to the American people over the coming months.
Well, let's talk about the coming months, Gabe. What exactly are you hearing about the strategy that we're going to see from President Trump? I know that he says he's going to be out there on the trail. What exactly are you expecting?
Well, look, I know during this first year there have been much of the MAGA base and many Trump supporters who feel the president paid too much attention to foreign policy, that he didn't get out into the country enough, and instead focused on, many other issues. And so, some White House officials have acknowledged that. They argue that the president's policies have been benefiting Americans and that he is the best messenger. And he's been talking about, affordability, perhaps not using that word, but they do expect him, they say, to travel the country in the coming months and to try to meet Americans where they are, and that they feel that we haven't seen much on the official schedule. We do know the president is heading for another foreign trip in just a couple of weeks to China, but we are hearing from White House officials that the plan is for the president, again, who they feel is the most effective messenger, to try and sell his policies, something the president himself has acknowledged that, he's blamed his aides and a little bit for not getting his message across, but he wants to get it out there, and he wants Americans to listen to that message, and that he, and not Democrats, is better for affordability.
Well, Gabe, as I was just talking about with Priscilla, what makes today so extraordinary, here he's going to be in Corpus Christi, Texas, with the three Republican candidates, Senator John Cornyn, Ken Paxton, Wesley Hunt. He hasn't endorsed anyone.
Yeah,
Talk about why. What's the strategy, and what did he say about that today, Gabe?
Look, it is very fascinating for the future of the Republican Party here. You have Ken Paxton, John Cornyn, really, two different factions of the Republican Party. And look, that may be a reason why the president has chosen not to endorse her. He dodged the question today. It doesn't look like he will. We don't expect him to endorse anyone before that primary. And part of that is because, look, President Trump does not like picking a loser in any political race. That is some of the things that he dislikes the most. And he may be waiting to see how the dust settles here. And depending on who wins, if this goes to a runoff, if Democrats were to win this seat in Texas, in deep red Texas, that could be very embarrassing for the president of the United States. So he and the White House watching this race very carefully and waiting to see how the dust settles, at least past Tuesday, before he makes any endorsement in this race, before he weighs in on this race, I should say.
It's going to be fascinating to watch it all unfold Tuesday night, that's for sure. Brian, let me turn to you. So here we heard the president say prices are going down. He's talked about this golden age for the economy. We do have this new inflation report, though, that has a little bit of a contradictory note there. Tell us what your key takeaways are from that report.
Yeah, we got numbers this morning. It's called the Producer Price Index, or PPI. It's part of this alphabet soup of all these different types of readings we get on what prices look like in America. I should point out, these are wholesale prices. So basically what the producer of a particular item charges a retailer before it then gets passed on to the consumer. So again, we're talking about what your retailer is paying, not necessarily you and me, but it showed that prices in January increased at a top line level by 0.5%, again, in the month of January. That was above what economists were expecting. They were expecting something a little bit closer to 0.3%. So either way you cut it or slice it, you don't want prices to rise at a faster pace than you expect. And that's what this report shows, at least at a wholesale level. And again, the fear is that those price increases could get passed on to the consumer and lead to higher overall inflation as well. As you point out, that is going to be an issue for the Trump administration, which has at times said prices are going down. Well, that's a plus number that you see on that graphic ahead of you. That means that prices are going up. Yes, it is indeed the case that energy prices are down. Food prices are also down in this particular report. But the overall figure that we're looking at here, prices in America at a high level are still going up instead of down. That is an issue for messaging for the administration.
So, Brian, how does all of this compare to other economic indicators that you're watching for right now?
Yeah, well, naturally, given all the caveats that I just laid out for you, we really pay more close attention to the Consumer Price Index, which is a measure of inflation that you and I face at the store. This is the kind of bottom line measure, if you will. That particular measure, as we got last month, showed that prices rose by 2.4% on a year-over-year basis. Again, a lot of people might be saying, well, that's a lot more than 0.5%, but we're talking about a yearly measure there. And that sounds all right when you consider that the yearly rate of inflation during the peak part of the Biden administration was somewhere closer to 9%. That's a good improvement, but a lot of economists have said where we really want to be is closer to 2%. So 2.4% is obviously above 2%. So it's not yet mission accomplished. We're not there yet. The president has pointed out that inflation is something closer to 1.7% based off of some 3-month figure. He said that in the State of the Union, we at the business team have not been able to verify that. It shows there's a lot of conflicting information out there, especially with the messaging from the White House, Kristen.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.